All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth. And in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bashim Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Shah. Alright. What I want to get into is in the transit, okay, dealing with, some war talk and where we stand. Okay? Because as we know, dealing with this third world war, okay, we keep seeing, things ignite, and simmer back down, okay, which goes to the prophecies of wars and rumors of wars, that we will continue to see these things until, the Lord will allow this war to go full throttle, okay? So we're seeing, these nations, go at it, and then they'll find the off ramp, and it's like a boxing match, okay, where the boxer goes back to their corner, but that doesn't mean that the fight is over, okay? So even with this latest with small hats in Iran, they're calling this round one, okay, and which by unanimous decision, all right, everyone is saying, Iran won the first round. It exposed the Iron Dome, okay, it introduced missiles, okay, that never before have been used in combat, okay. They was able to absorb, Israeli strikes, okay, and punch back, okay, using, 20, 30-year-old missiles, all right, using different strike packages. And so what we've seen, because a lot of times between the small hats and Iran, Iran usually retaliate in a real conservative way, okay. They will usually telegraph, their retaliation, to intentionally not to cause any casualties. But see, this time they didn't do that. You see, those 12 days we just seen, the small hats in Iran was at war. They went to war for them 12 days. They was really getting it on. Iran was catching bodies. Okay, Iran, they Tel Aviv ain't the same no more in them 12 days. Okay, and see the West, can spin it like, the Israelis, they just did their thing, and they blocked all the missiles, and Iran, and this and that, which it was a back and forth. So Iran, they took some shots too. Okay, but guess what? One thing about it, because when Trump jumped in, that was a political move. And then when he proclaimed a ceasefire, that was a political move. Because if Iran, were to keep on fighting, it would make it seem like Iran was rogue. And one thing that we know, the world is looking at America and the small hats as rogue states. Okay, and they try to trick Iran, into these, traps, so they can be called rogue on a global, from a world view. But no, the world is looking at the small hats in America as the villains in this incident, and they're looking at Iran as the hero. So, what these devils, everything that these devils attempt to do is failing. Okay, and we speak about Iran. Iran is just the beginning, just the beginning of this thing. All right, like I say, in the West, they'll spin it, as if the small hats were just out there wrecking shit. No, but guess what? Tel Aviv, no. Okay, DC, no. Washington, DC, no. Iran, no. The people in that region know what just happened. You know, the West, they don't have a clue what's going on. To them, Trump is just, especially with niggas, you know, especially with niggas. You see, but to them, Trump is some type of hero. But no, that's not the case. Okay, Iran, okay, just won the 12-day war with Israel. So now, what's happening, because it was some things shown in that war, and what America did was show that it would come to Israel's defense, that it would get directly involved in a conflict between Iran and the small hats. So now, 2 days later, after the ceasefire, Iran is in a military meeting, okay, with Russia and China and other, nations of the East, different other military commanders of the East. So you best believe they're discussing strategy, okay, because they know round two gonna jump off soon. Those small hats, they ain't just gonna chill. See, they know they took an L. Like, they can lie to the Western media, like, but they know they just took an L. Esau ain't gonna he ain't gonna let that L ride like that. Okay? And it's prophetic that the least of the flock gotta continue drawing these major nations out. So you had Iran 2 days after the ceasefire. They met with China and Russia, and you best believe they're discussing strategy when this shit go off, when this shit really go down and it don't stop. Okay, best believe they got America calculated into the equation. Okay, round two, when this shit jump off again, because it's only a matter of time. All right, because prophecy said it gotta go down. So we know this ceasefire is just in between the rounds. Okay, and when you go to your rounds, what do? You go to your corner and you get, pointers of what to do, what to keep doing. Don't do that. They telling you about him, what he's doing, and his. So that's what's happening. The small hats in America, they in their corner, okay, and Iran in their corner with Russia, okay, and China, all right, and those other countries. They call it Shanghai Cooperation, which I got an article a little where I could do a pre-record video kind of going to the Shanghai Cooperation, but Iran is in that, along with China, Russia, Pakistan, other nations, because Pakistan is a nuclear country as well, and without saying, Russia and China, okay? And what you got too, dealing with the latest, the events that just happened, you got these geopolitical analysts saying, well, Iran might as well get a nuke now. They might as well get it, because if you don't have the nuke, okay, America, okay, in the West, they treat you a certain type of way. Okay, you notice they haven't bombed North Korea, they haven't bombed Pakistan. Okay, they haven't bombed India. These nations got nukes. So now these geopolitical analysts are like, shit, Iran might as well get the nuke. It makes sense, because they said if Iran had the nukes, they wouldn't have this problem. Okay, but we know prophetically it got to go down anyway. So now, you got people saying Iran, shit, they might as well get the nuke, which, I believe they got them. World War III will tell all. Okay? But we know one thing, that everything is playing out exactly how we need to play out. So what we have to understand with this war, there was round one, and they back in their corners, and they getting, they making adjustments, and they strategizing for how they gonna move for the next round. Okay? And them small hats ain't ready. Okay? And in America, they're gonna have to come on in. All right, bombing empty warehouses ain't gonna get it. Okay, they're gonna have to deploy them troops. You see, according to Joel chapter 2, I believe verse 20. The scripture say he shall remove from thee the northern army. Speaking of the American military. All right, Well, they're gonna be stationed over there in the Saudi Arabia, okay, which is across the Gulf of Iran. You see, so what we have to understand, what we're watching, okay, is the break between the rounds, because you best believe they gonna get back busy, man. Small hats they got busted up. Like I say, Tel Aviv, no, you can lie, you can lie to America. You can't lie to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, no. Okay, Tel Aviv got a major black eye over there, man. Okay, them people over there in Jordan, like I said, them people in Jordan. It was one guy, who was reporting. Certain guy was watching. I forgot his name, but he would say he was in Jordan. So he said he was watching those missiles go over Jordan from Iran, going to the state of Israel. Okay, going to them small hats, and he said it sounded like the bombs were going off in Jordan, man. You know, see, Iran scrapped down, because what the scriptures say, how um the Carmanians shall come with great force, with great power. And that's why I know, like, it ain't just because like I'm biased towards Iran. It's just when the scriptures say the Carmanians shall come with great power, that means they got some shit over there, man. Okay, and we seen a glimpse of it. Okay, and that's just one piece of this puzzle of World War III. Okay, which we know soon to break out. Okay, so where we're at now, with this whole thing with the small hats in Iran, it's a break. It's a break between the rounds. Okay, and it's no more proxy anymore. They're not gonna go back. See, like we said, it's an escalation. So once you go up the escalation wrong, even if you take a break, they're gonna come back at that same point of escalation. They're not gonna go back to proxies anymore. They're gonna go back to direct contact. You see? So once you escalate, you don't go down. Okay? The way the Lord got it set up now, they're not going backwards. They're gonna go forward. When they re-engage again, they're gonna be direct contact. So this is the things that we're looking for, just to show where we stand. It's all, and that's another. It's so much news, and everybody's on TikTok with all this information, and everybody's trying to put their 2 cents in. Don't know what the fuck they talking about. Okay, people don't be knowing what the hell they be talking about when you go into what's happening real time. Okay, so you got these TikTok gurus, Western media, lying their ass off. Okay, you have all these things, happening, but then you have to filter everything through the scriptures, and then you have to deal with, liable sources. Man. That's why I like dealing with people that's over there in that region. They gonna tell you, they can tell you what's really happening, man. Boots on the ground perspective. So just going into where we stand, summing things up, we await, these prophecies to come to pass. But as far as, World War III, said we at the door, we know that the C-HIP is right there, because the closer we get to the war, we know C-HIP has to be implemented and made mandatory before this thing goes nuclear, man. Okay? But we can see a lot of conventional activity, conventional warfare, between these nations. All right, before the C-HIP, was mandated, and when the C-HIP is mandated, then nuclear war can happen any moment. When the C-HIP is mandated, nuclear war can happen at any moment. Okay, like the apostles say, things are going to speed up. It's going to go quick when the C-HIP is mandated, and that's that war. Okay, I just passed by a truck that said expedited. I just passed by a truck that said expedited. If a brother want to look that up real quick, post that word expedite. When that C-HIP is mandated, things are going to speed up quickly. Okay? And Yahweh Shai gonna be on all these nations' ass, man. You know? So dealing with where we stand, we good. 'Cause I know my scripture say, we get excited when things happen, and then, it simmer down, and then it's kind of like a letdown. Okay, but we have to understand things are right on track. Things are right on task. All these alliances that the Lord, said would be, okay, are right on point. The way that this World War III will happen, the least of the flock, well, the least of the flock are doing their thing. Cause long that nigga Netanyahu, that nigga full throttle. Okay, and that shit with that's another thing too. Like Trump, he dropped the F bomb. Talking about he was displeased with Israel. That nigga was acting, man. Okay, that nigga was acting. That nigga is not mad at those small hats. Okay, that nigga is not mad. He might be disappointed. All right, them niggas got their ass drugged for them 12 days. Okay, but that nigga's not mad at the small hats. Okay, that was an act. That's why he put so much emphasis on he was mad at Israel and he dropped the F bomb. That nigga, all right, was acting. Like the water broke for that definition. Yep. It says expedited. It says make an action, all right, or process happen sooner or be accomplished more quickly. You know, so him and the brother Yum Yad, got it as well. The brother Bayon Yashala. So these things, okay, are when the sea hip is mandated, salvation is gonna be expedited. Salvation is gonna be expedited, man. Okay, it sounds like a El Kazak lesson. you know, Salvation is gonna be expedited when the sea hip is made mandatory, man. Okay, because after it's made mandatory, nuclear war can jump off any day. Okay, so you're gonna see, we're gonna see some conventional war, with these nations. Okay, and they can have conventional war, for a length of time. They can have conventional war for months and years. Okay, so we're gonna see, some flashpoints. Okay, where these nations clash. Okay, they gonna test and see where each other at. We're gonna see a few chin checks. Okay, but we're here. Ain't no doubt about it. We're here. So that was the point. Just wanted to go into that. On the way to camp. Some things I was meditating on. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Once again, I'm gonna give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great example to our younger brothers. And peace and blessed salutations to the hopeful Shalom.